BBI iangalie.
Tungependa kuexpand hapo juu, lakini pesa mingi bado iende kwa mashinani kwa wananchi wetu.
We must do everything possible to implement those issues that require policy change, simple legislation, constitutional change, and referendum.
In the federal system, ni lazima kuwe na referendum, kura ya maoni.
Ale tumependekeza watu wa pwani, ikiwa pamoja na kuwa na prime minister na deputy prime minister, lazima Kenya iende referendum.
But in a circle where politicians have had their way almost every time, of whose interest will an expanded executive be? Good evening, I'm Abubakar Abdullahi. Thank you for, as always, making time for us here on TV47. You're watching Spotlight. Remember, you can be part of this discussion. Twitter is at TV47KE. The hashtag to use is TV47 Spotlight. My guest, unfortunately, one in studio. We had three, but one is already in studio, is Godfrey Osotsi, nominated Member of Parliament. Mheshimiwa, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you very much.
To start us off this discussion, why expand or why flaunt an idea of wanting to expand an executive in a country that is struggling with public wage bill, public debt, in a country that one will say is in an economic turmoil?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that the agitation for reforms in this country and through the BBI agenda is not to overburden Kenyans.
So that's how it seems, isn't it? When you have more leaders coming to the rank.
It's to try and create an environment where we have efficiency and we have value for money for Kenyans. This narrative that is being peddled around, that BBI is all about creating positions for some political elites, I don't think it's true, because expanded executive is not a new thing. We had an expanded executive during the Grand Coalition government when President Kibaki through PNU and Raila Odinga through ODM came together and formed the Grand Coalition government. We had the Prime Minister, we had the President, we had the Vice President, we had two Prime Ministers, and we had ministers.
One would argue, on that point, one would argue in 2008 rather, we had the election violence that saw the country divided to what it was.
Now,
the skirmishes that begot the Grand Coalition government where we had a Prime Minister. What in situation after the handshake will mean that we have
that
a Prime Minister position?
That is just one scenario. The second scenario is that the bomber's draft document, if you get a copy of it, it proposed that we were going to have president, a deputy president, prime minister, and two deputy prime ministers. So that is not something new. And we are saying that for this country to achieve the progress we want to achieve, we must rethink the system of governance we have in this country.
And we'll come to the perfect system, for instance, that will work well for Kenya a little bit later. But let me quote you on what you have said. You said, and I quote, "This is one of the anti-BBI narrative being peddled by Tanga hoping to stop the BBI train. BBI is dealing with 9 thematic areas which will affect every Kenyan in one way or another. BBI proposal on expanded executive is not new. It was even in the bomber's draft, which was a product of wide negotiations." You still hold that view?
Yes, I hold that view, and many Kenyans know that. You know, let us understand this very clearly, that when President Uhuru Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, when they had the handshake was not just a handshake. There was a communique signed by the two leaders. That communique was talking about 9 things they want implemented. We had issues of security, we had issues of historic injustice, we had issues of elections, we had issues of shared prosperity, 9 issues. But our brothers in Tanga are not talking about the 9 issues.
And
they are only talking about issue of power.
And just to be fair on both sides, when you have 22 governors who are in their second and final term saying they have no problem if the system of governance is relooked at, suggesting or suggestively hinting as though they still want to be in the system, shouldn't that not be a worry for Kenya?
Let me tell you, my good friend, that the process of constitutional making is about seeking views from a wide cross-section of Kenyans and a wide cross-section of the society. Even the American Constitution, Philadelphia Convention, it was not an easy thing. There were a lot of push and pull. Even at the Bombers draft, you saw people had divergent issues. There was a lot of commotion here and there. Even this BBI process, there are those who will have divergent views. But as it has been said, let us allow everyone to say what he wants. At the end of the day, we will sit down, the BBI team will sit down, harmonize all those ideas, and come up with a compromise document that Kenyans will look at. For example, there has been a misplaced narrative that BBI is about introducing regional government. If you look at the BBI document that was released at Bombers of Kenya, it doesn't talk about regional government.
But some of the proposals made by some of the regions are inclusive.
Those are their views. Those are their views. When we went to Mombasa, they talked about regional government. But when we went to Narok, they were against regional government. Those are views being brought to the table. But we are not saying that all those views will be taken into the final document. They will have to be weighed against what other people have said.
And doesn't that question the very logic of inclusivity, in the sense that you are seeking my opinion to include me in this draft, in this BBI report, but you will not necessarily pick what my arguments will be?
It has happened before. With this constitution we are having, we had different ideas. We had people who were so passionate about the parliamentary system of government. But we ended up having a presidential system of government. Constitutional making is a give and take process. So we should not be worried about what people are saying, because there should be a openness in the process of making a new constitution. We should allow people to talk as much as they want, because every region has its own needs. When you go to Coast, they're talking about land issues. When you go to Masai, they're talking about land issues. When you go to Western, the issues could be different. When you go to Meru, the issues are different. That is what makes a nation. And I've given you an example that even constitutional making in the largest democracy in the world, America, Philadelphia in 1776, around there, we had this tussle about what needs to be captured in the document. So constitutional making is characterized by what we are seeing today. So we shouldn't now take that as a basis to say we should stop this debate. We should allow this debate to go on.
But when you have both sides talk of stopping and not stopping reggae, when you have positions being mentioned at some of these BBI rallies, it seems as though it's all about suiting the interest of politicians rather than the people.
Let me tell you one thing.
Fair enough.
That we have two groups of people. We have people who are genuinely supporting the BBI process. We have people who are pretending to be supporting BBI process.
And do you know who these people who are pretending to be supporting are?
Behind the scene, they are fighting it. Yes, I can confidently say Tanga. First of all, let me give you a chronology of issues. They were against the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. And they said all the bad things about it. The handshake gave birth to BBI. They never went to present views before BBI committee. Because BBI committee went to 47 counties. I never saw the deputy president. I never saw all these Tanga people. They never presented their views.
Even though, just to be fair, he says he will present his views when that time comes. He hasn't specified when.
He hasn't presented. Then, when we went to Bombers of Kenya to launch that document, they all said they were going to support it. Little did we know that our intention was to hijack it, because they started to say that they want that document to go to parliament. That failed. Then, when the process of now moving this to the people, in Kisii, they had a narrative to say money is being wasted in this thing. Kakamega, they brought the narrative that this is an ODM affair. It failed. Then we went to Kitui, again they brought another narrative of Moses Kuria coming and doing a drama there of walkout. It failed again. Then they went to Masai, they brought out issues of, language, we have not been welcome into a meeting. If you have a Masai elder who doesn't understand English and he wants to know what is happening, surely there will be a translation from English to Swahili to or to Masai.
But when members of other communities are kicked out purportedly from this meeting.
Translation. We are talking about translation. The document resolutions were in English. They had to be translated to Maasai. So these guys...
And that was difficult in convincing the people who were there?
Yes, they
wanted... to tell them that this will be exclusively in Maasai language?
No, that was
rather
not
than
the case.
Kicking them out?
That was supposed to be a narrative by Tangatanga to spoil for that meeting, but it never... it went on. Then, Meru, you saw what happened. Organizing crowds to appear that they're walking out, and then they ended up walking out with the crowd they had hired. But the crowd that came to listen to what was happening stayed.
Fair enough. Amidst both sides claiming that they both hired crowds.
Let me tell you.
Let's move from that point. Let's move from that point. Given then to what the public is treated to the display of Tangatanga, Kieleweke, plus other fractions within this debate, is it healthy for Kenyans to believe that there will be any fruit at the end of this product?
Let me tell you, at the end of the day, we must ask yourself, what did Raila and Uhuru intend? The intention was that they wanted to resolve the 9 issues that are facing Kenyans. And you can agree with me, the 9 issues affect me and you and every other Kenyan. That is very important. 2, we must not mix the BBI process with the 2022. The difference between those of us who are supporting BBI process and the Tangatanga is that Tangatanga, they think, they sleep, they walk 2022. They are always thinking about 2022.
But can the same not be said from the end you support, now that you have made it public here?
Yes.
From the end that is pro-BBI. When you say so-and-so will not be the president of Kenya come 2022, when it seemingly there is an afferent on one side of the political divide, surely one will say this side also has political sidings.
You see, let me tell you, that's why I said, the views expressed by individuals is not the views of the entire BBI process. Politicians will say what they have to say, but we must stick to the issues. The issues here is the 9 issues. I want Murkomen, I want Moses Kuria to start talking about issues of security. I want him to start talking about issues of historic injustice. They should not make BBI look like it is just about one issue, sharing of power. BBI is about 9 key issues that affect every Kenyan.
And at that point, when Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli, for instance, says publicly more than twice in the rallies without anyone contradicting him that President Uhuru Kenyatta is young and is not going anywhere post-2022. Is that something that the side you are siding with is supportive of?
First of all,
he says that as a general.
Kotu Secretary General has a personal opinion. That is his personal opinion. That is not the opinion of Raila Odinga. That is not the opinion of Uhuru Kenyatta. We are waiting to hear Uhuru Kenyatta himself say that. So you cannot now judge the process of BBI because of statements of a few people. We have heard even Tangatanga side, Moses Kuria saying all manner of things. Who has ever questioned him about it? Those are, this country, we have a constitution that gives every Kenyan the freedom of speech, the freedom of association. So I do not see any bad thing about it, but what is important is that can we discuss the real issues in BBI, which is 9 issues, which are very critical. I am not hearing those who are opposing BBI talking about elections, which is one of the issues in BBI. I am not hearing them talking about shared prosperity, which shared prosperity means that the economic gains of this country, the national cake of this country, to be shared across whole region. I have not heard them talking about devolution. One of the proposals in BBI is to increase allocation from 15% to 35%.
Even though they say
they are not talking about that.
Even though they promise that they will be making their submissions,
you see,
in front of the Haji-led steering committee. Fair enough.
The problem with the Tanga is that they are playing catch up to this process. They have realized that.
And are they playing catch up because they were excluded from the beginning?
No, they excluded themselves because initially, you remember Ruto, he went to rallies and told people that there is conmanship hidden into this BBI process. Then he came to Bomas of Kenya to receive the document and say this is a good document. Then again he has started what he used to say before. So the problem with them is that they are trying to play catch up on BBI. They are assuming that Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta are running with this process and they are trying to catch up. But their catch up strategy is a wrong strategy.
And how do you say they are playing catch up? For instance, from the beginning when they were told there will be a tsunami, suggestively hitting on their side without the president's side, is that still catch up?
No.
When the language that was used from the beginning suggested, hinted as though there is one side that is being left out?
Let me tell you, that is political rhetoric. When I talk about a tsunami, that is in politics what we call political symbolism. It is not the tsunami that you know. It is because we are talking about change that cannot be stopped. We are talking about when we say, for example, you cannot stop reggae. What we mean is that Kenya wants change. And I want to tell you one thing. This constitution we have, we passed in 2010. We all agreed, those people who are opposing and those who are supporting, we all agreed that 20% of that document had issues that we needed to deal with. But we did not say when we were going to deal with. BBI provides that opportunity to deal with the 20% issues that we were to deal with. Honorable Ruto led the No Team campaign.
And he had a democratic right to read that.
Yeah, he had a democratic right. Now he's one of the beneficiaries of those who supported the document. Even this BBI process that he is looking like he's opposing, who knows? He may be the beneficiary. So we want them to stop all these negative narratives against BBI. That, oh, BBI is about giving people positions. Oh, BBI is about Raila. Oh, BBI is about bringing back Uhuru into power.
I understand
BBI, we must understand, is a product of the handshake.
I understand that we need to take a short break. But before that, just on the question of the language that was used pre the BBI and post. Tsunami, you have clarified it's not the tsunami that geologically we know. It's a political
change
tsunami
that is unstoppable.
And that change seemingly was going to be stopped by anyone?
It's not going to be stopped by anyone because
fair enough.
Majority of Kenyans want change.
And still on the language
we want change. The 9 issues affect each and every Kenyan. And when we talk about security, does it affect you? It affects you.
It does. Yes,
when we talk about historic injustice, there are so many Kenyans who are suffering because of historic injustice. We must fix this problem.
And still on the point of the language that we are discussing here, when you say there's no one that can stop reggae, and this is a phrase that has been used, credited to the song of Lucky Dube, of course, it seems as though there is someone who could be intending to stop this reggae. Is it so? Or am I reading too much?
Let me tell you one thing. Whoever intends to stop reggae will not succeed.
And who is that person?
He will not succeed because the handshake and BBI are intertwined.
Hold on, that's
if BBI dies, chances are very high. The handshake will also die.
Fair enough. Hold on that thought. I understand we have a caller calling. Good evening. Hello, TV47.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Kindly go ahead.
Okay, I want to ask the guy in the studio a question. What are we lacking in Kenya, or what we don't have in Kenya, that we can have a position of Prime Minister? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you, yes.
I want to ask a question.
Yes, ask.
That what are we lacking in Kenya, or what do we have in Kenya, because we don't have a Prime Minister?
You're asking what we are lacking in Kenya to suit this constitutional change, if I'm right? Am I getting you correctly?
Yeah. Because it seems we are lacking something because we don't have a prime minister in Kenya.
And let me ask you this before you hang up. As a Kenyan, do you think we are lacking anything to guarantee or warrant a constitutional change?
No.
Okay, let me ask you a question now to Mheshimiwa Godfrey Osotsi, nominated member of parliament. What will guarantee or warrant a constitutional change? I think that's what the caller is asking.
First of all, we must agree that in 2010 we passed a constitution. And before we passed that constitution, we was negotiated through wide consultation called the Bombers Draft. You remember Bombers Draft brought delegates from across the country. They were there in Bombers, they discussed all these issues. Then when that document went to Naivasha, some aspects of it were mutilated. For example, the parliamentary system that had been proposed in the Bombers Draft was replaced by a pure presidential system. The prime minister position and 2 deputies were also replaced. And many other very key issues were removed. Now, I can give you an example.
Again on positions.
Yes.
The questions are on positions.
I will also come to positions. Now, in parliament where I sit, we do not have ministers sitting in parliament. The ministers who are, in this case, cabinet secretaries, they sit outside parliament. It is the most frustrating system because if I have an issue I want addressed, it takes ages to have it addressed. But in the old system where we had ministers sitting in the house, you just walk to your colleague and talk to him about the issues, and you have issues addressed very quickly. So one of the things we want to bring back, and I'm happy BBI has made that proposal, is that the ministers to be in the house. The second thing is to bring back prime minister. And you know, when we had the prime minister in the coalition government, a lot of good things happened during coalition government because of that structure. So we cannot say expanded executive. In any case, let me tell you, the ministers who will sit in the house will only earn one salary as before. Right now we have MPs and then you have ministers who sit outside and they answer
with a double task of presenting their people and the dockets that they'll be holding.
So when people talk about expanded executive,
we'll talk of those
it's not an expanded executive.
We'll talk of those challenges, the parliamentary system of governance and the Bombers Draft that you have quoted, I think, twice in this interview, the 188-page document. We'll make sense of that as well. It is time for us to take a short break here on Spotlight. Remember, you can be part of this discussion. Tweet us at TV47KE. The hashtag to use is TV47 Spotlight. We'll be back shortly after this break.
The skills you develop and the drive you develop is what matters. Because if you get your opportunity, no one will give you the next level. You have to fight for it.
Young people who are in the education system, they are the very lucky people because you have a card that can speak for you. I am a student. Can I do this? I am a student. Can I do this? You have a card that can speak for you.
We're the ones who are going to live through this country for the next 50 years. And it's something that needs to be fixed today. And so I think the ones who should be championing in terms of having a better country and pushing for equality is young people.
The parents probably went to school in 1980, 1962. During those times you had a degree, you are a provincial administrator. Immediately. Right now, I cannot imagine how many mathematicians graduated last year, December. I cannot imagine.
And so we need to realize that the situation is dire. And sometimes even our office WhatsApp group, we get DMs of people crying because they are jobless. and it's depressing to the point where they're telling you they're going to commit suicide.
We would not be having this conversation if 20 years ago the nation had this conversation about what work would look like.
Right. On this particular program, the hashtag to use as always is hashtag YouthConnect, and my name as always is Eugene Adnangwe. Josephine Uko is actually helping us to interpret this through sign language.
Of which I'm certain, for what is the plan?
For half price, 30 million US. $30 million from me. What do you want?
Get on your knees! You have 3 seconds to comply. 1, 2,
3. If you wanted me, bro.
Welcome back to Spotlight. Thank you for staying with us. Remember, you can be part of this discussion. Tweet us. We will gladly and so willingly read some of your feedback. And before we even get back to the discussion, if we can have some of the feedback already. Musa Salah says the BBI and the executive expansion is an admission of the failure by the political elite. The wild dog are on eating spree and Kenyans are too deep into the propaganda of seeing the Umbwa Kali sign. Okay, Nick Mavindi says politicians stand to benefit because a bloated executive means a heavier load for Mwananchi. Jack Masharia on Facebook, I believe, says, of course the politicians, Kenyans lose everything and every time in this era. Mungu Baba tunukue, I think, sasa. When you hear Mheshimiwa Kenyans as though in agreement that this is entirely about the political class, the political elite, how do you convince such people that this is indeed about them?
You see, I have said before that this narrative that this process of BBI is about creating positions for the political elite is just a narrative. Because, one, it was there. These positions that we are talking about, the 5 positions, president, deputy president, prime minister, and 2 deputies. It was there in the Boma's draft. Boma's draft was not a document of the elite. It was a document arising from a people-driven process. 2, one of the things the BBI is proposing, which I support, is that the ministers or cabinet secretaries will be drawn among the members of parliament, and they will not earn a double salary.
Which is parliamentary system of government.
Which is a
we'll come to that.
So already that one is already dealing with the issue of expanded executive.
We have someone on Twitter. We have someone on Twitter asking you, why is it that because there are BBI consultative forums in the country, politicians now tend to think everyone supports the document, then the same politicians will insist that BBI is not politically driven? This is Brian Kosgei at Kosgei on Twitter.
Let me tell you, any constitutional making process, as I've said before, is a political process. A political process of engaging the masses, a political process of engaging the stakeholders.
A political process with the interest of who? Politicians or the people?
A political process of wide interest, the interest of various regions. That's why you see that BBI rallies, wherever you go, you see the interests are differing. It's because that is a political process. And I've given you an example that the world's largest democracy, which is America, when they were making their constitution in 1770s, they had these challenges in Philadelphia. Everyone was saying whatever he had to say, until George Washington had to put this guy in one room to agree. We saw the Boma's draft how chairs were flying because people could not agree on these things. We saw the Naivasha process, how difficult it was. So a constitutional making process is about interest. Interest of the masses. Which
still begs the question.
Yes.
In this case, are we in agreement to say that it is the interest of politicians per se that is headlining the interest of the people?
Not
you disagree with that?
Not necessarily politicians, everyone. And that is why the Haji team went to all the 47 counties collecting views. That is why we are now going out to sensitize the public in these BBI rallies. And after that, even the Haji team will still go down to the counties to seek for more views to validate the document. That is a people-driven process. And then it will be brought to the people. The issues which require referendum will go through a people-driven referendum process. So this is a process that is a people-driven process. The challenge we are having is that the people, some of the people who claim that they are supporting this process, they are indeed not supporting this process.
And how do you judge whether someone is supporting or not?
If
they are both publicly declared that they are supporting this process?
It is very easy. Some of these people who are largely in Tanga, they claimed that they were not going to support BBI. Before the report was released in Bomas, you heard them. They said there is conmanship hidden in this BBI process. But when they realized that the document was not what they expected, they supported it in Bomas. After that, when they realized that they could not hijack that document by bringing it to Parliament and not the people, they now started all this narrative about, it is about sharing position, it is about Raila for president in 2022, it is about bringing back Uhuru Kenyatta. Let me tell you one thing. If I was an advisor to the deputy president, I will tell him that please be facilitative of this process. Because this process is not about you. This process is not about Uhuru Kenyatta. This process is about Kenyans.
I believe the deputy president, I want to assume he's watching and he must have heard that and what you have advised him on. Would you advise as well the side that you are part of to tone down the politics and leave BBI to be the Building Bridges initiative that is intended to be?
Let me tell you, what we are doing in the BBI rallies is, one, to sensitize the public about the document that has already been given, and also to allow the regions to also give their proposals. And what happens in BBI meetings is that the regions representative meet, discuss the document, come up with the resolutions, which is now read out to the wider mass to accept or reject. We did that in Kakamega, we did that in Kisii, we have done that in Kitui, we have done that in Meru, we have done that in Narok. And it has gone on smoothly. The challenge we are having, and Kenyans must note this, is that there are individuals who think about 2022. When we talk about let's us handle BBI process first, them they're already thinking about 2022. That is where the disconnect is.
But just to be fair, when you see the language used at some of the BBI rallies, it's also indicative of 2022 politics, isn't it?
Let me tell you.
Just to be fair.
I said one thing, that constitutional making process is a political process.
Fair enough. And why is it that, another point, why is it that you have an issue when this other side talks of 2022 and the political suspicion in the BBI rallies, and you have no problem when members stand addressing the public in BBI rallies talking about 2022 politics? Isn't that not sheer hypocrisy?
No, let me tell you, the views that are expressed in those meetings on 2022 or on their preference or whatever, those are just political semantics. What is important, and Kenyans must know that, is the resolutions that regions give. When we went to Coast, there were resolutions.
Yes.
When we went to Western, there were resolutions. When we went to Masai Land, there was resolution. When we went to Meru, there were resolutions. The other drama that you see people like Moses Kuria, they come there, they come late, when they know that they can't get seats when they come late, they stand, and then they cause drama, and that is unfortunately what is reported. But why can't we focus on what regions say? For example, in Meru, They talked about wide issues that affect them. The miraa industry. They talked about how they want their counties to be managed. Those are issues that needs to be picked up. And if we focus on issues that regions resolve, then we will be telling Kenyans the right things. Let us not focus on the semantic or a political drama by people who
and
are
as we
out,
move from that point, we both agree that these political semantics are on both sides. As we move from that point, both sides have political interest in this.
Yes, of course, constitutional making process, I told you, is a political process.
Fair enough. Let's talk of the parliamentary system of governance. A fronted point in these BBI rallies, BBI debate, which in a nutshell is a system of governance, of democratic governance of a state where the executive drives its power from the confidence of parliament or the legislature, typically a parliament. Given what we have seen in Kenya's, with respect again to Kenya's parliament, the scandal of members of parliament being bribed with as little as 10,000 shillings, which again elicited discussions of whether these houses can be trusted. Why should 47 million Kenyans believe in the parliament to make these decisions for them?
Let me first of all say the issue of parliamentarians receiving 10,000 shillings, it was investigated. And there was no evidence to implicate any single member of parliament for having received the 10,000 that he has been alleged.
In a country where we know how investigations end, it's again up to open for question.
Even the members who had made those claims, they were not able to prove them. 2, parliament is composed of elected representative of the people. They represent the people. So if you feel your member of parliament is not representing you effectively, then you have a choice of removing him from parliament. And there are provisions in law.
But we agree that has been a house, for the longest time, that has been a house of groupthink, voting on loyalties based on your political party than the interest of Kenyans.
Now, that is why we have BBI. One of the things that I have heard that BBI is considering is what we call proportional representation. A similar system that we have in South Africa, where we now vote for political parties. The political parties identify the people who will come and represent them. That system probably will help. But what is important is that Parliament is a supreme body that represents the interest of Kenyans, the interest of the people.
And is it always the interest of the people that Parliament represents? Without questioning the integrity of the members there, and with respect to your colleagues, when we see an issue such as members voting irrespective of whether the topic discussed is affecting Kenyans or not, changing law,
you know why
favoring one side?
You know why we have elections after 5 years? It's because if one is not...
You're not satisfied with one, you change. But isn't 5 years too long to change that?
And
if you have a parliament that you can't trust.
And even in between, there is a procedure for recall. You can recall your member of parliament and remove him from parliament and get a new member of parliament. So these are the instruments which are in the constitution, which we need to start exercising. But we cannot say that this country cannot do without parliament. Parliament exists. And one of the primary roles of parliament is oversight.
Yes.
And the oversight will be strengthened if we have a parliamentary system of government.
The parliamentary system,
unlike the presidential system of government which we have now.
The parliamentary system of governance initiates of a president who is a ceremonial president elected by the people, a prime minister who is powerful, elected MPs or part of the parliament, and selected cabinet, be it from outside the parliament or within the parliament. Why would one want to be the president of Kenya if at all there will be ceremonial?
Well, those are proposals. That is not yet the...
in such case?
Yeah, those are proposals. But I have had divergent views about how they want. Some people have said they want a powerful prime minister. Others have said they want a weak prime minister and an executive president. So those are views which I'm sure the BBI team will synthesize and come up with a document. Then we can start now discussing about it. But my view is that if we want to strengthen the governance of this country, I think we need to have a strong parliamentary system of government where we have like the British system.
And you have question time, just to be
we
fair.
have question time, and I have given you an example that the 5-year period when we had the Grand Coalition government, where the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga used to be asked questions, and he was able to address all the issues that members of parliament had. And members of parliament had to address issues directly to the ministers who are there then. And right now, like I have a question that I asked last year. It has not been answered.
And you think having a prime minister who is answerable to parliament will ease such needs?
Yes.
Fair enough. You talk of the UK, we have the Queen, and you have the Prime Minister. In Kenya, the Grand Coalition government is often quoted to have been a perfect, near perfect system of the implementation of a parliamentary system of governance. Credit to what was done. But what we have seen under that government as well is division among the executive itself. Two parallel, as though, centers of power. What will avoid that if we are to have a president and a prime minister?
You know, the Grand Coalition was a special kind of an arrangement that arose out of the situation of the post-election violence. In this case, we had two parties, PNU and ODM. But in a perfect parliamentary system, we may not necessarily have two competing political parties. We may, if you look at the proposal, they are saying that the Prime Minister will be appointed by the President. Will be appointed by the President. And
not Parliament voting for this Prime Minister?
Will be from a party with the largest number of members of Parliament. What does that tell you? It tells you that eventually the President and the Prime Minister will be likely to be from the same political party.
The ideal situation is such, isn't it?
So that
but we have also seen governors and their deputies split, be involved in a political divorce, for the lack of a better word. What guarantees that that can't happen at a top level as well?
Well, and that is why we are also seeking to strengthen the relationship between the governor and the deputies in the BBI process, so that we don't have this scenario that we are having. One of the things is to try and say, how do you manage a scenario where there is a vacancy in the position of governor? And how do you protect the position of governor from political intrigues? Because as you can clearly see, that deputy governor can play games on the governor so that he takes over the position of governor. So those are issues that we need to tinker with, even as we are thinking about this BBI process. And I'm sure the BBI committee will be able to address some of these things.
Fair enough, and you have made mention of fine-tuning this document and sending it back to Kenyans. Is this, not to misquote you or to quote you, suggestive of a referendum?
The referendum will have to happen.
Will have to happen.
It will have
You're
to happen.
certain that it will?
I am certain it will have to happen. You know why? It's because in our current constitution, it is very clear under what circumstances can the country go to referendum. One of the circumstances is when there is a change in the structure of government. If we are saying we want to have ministers sitting in the house, cabinet secretary sitting in the house, that is structure of government. That will have to be done through referendum. If we are saying we want to change the devolution structure, maybe we want to increase allocation from 15% to 35% or 45%, that will have to be determined through a referendum. If we want to tinker with the Bill of Rights, that will have to go through a referendum. So in fact, I'm surprised when I hear people saying some of the issues we are talking about are not issues to go through the referendum. They need to read the constitution.
Fair enough, hold on that thought. I understand we have a caller from Embu. Good evening. Hello, TV47.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
My name is Charles from Embu. My name is Charles from Embu. I'm asking Mheshimiwa.
Yes.
Why are they treating these people that they are calling Tanga team?
Pardon, if you will kindly repeat that.
Why are they trying not accommodate the Tanga team? Hello?
Yes, I think I've heard your question. Well, you're asking why they are not accommodating the Tanga team, and presumably there you mean which side?
Yes, because they are not comfortable with the way the meetings are being carried.
Mm-hmm.
They are not comfortable with the way the meetings are being conducted. But they are not against the BBI. They are just against the BBI process. So why are they not being accommodated to them?
And I asked you a question of who the they in your sentiment is. The they you mean people who are supporting the BBI?
Everybody is supporting the BBI.
Fair enough. I think I've gotten your question. The caller is asking, why does it seem as though you're not welcoming to Tanga side?
Let me tell you one thing. No one is stopping Tanga from joining BBI meetings. Mm-hmm. The problem is that Tanga want to play some dirty politics. They want to play some dirty politics on this. For example, in Mombasa, mm-hmm. when they said they are coming to Mombasa, we said they are welcome to come to Mombasa. But you know what happened in Mombasa? They waited until everyone else is seated, and they knew that they were going to have a problem getting seats because the seats had been occupied. Mm-hmm. So they came late, knowing very well they can't get seats. They were given seats.
And more than the seats, when they are censored, they are not allowed to speak at some of these.
No, they were given chance. Murkomen was given a chance to speak in Mombasa.
When you heard what he said. And when you give 1 out of 10 a chance to speak.
Do you heard what Murkomen said in Mombasa? One, he appreciated the role Raila Odinga has played in this process. Two, he also said that they in Tanga are ready for a referendum. When we went to Kitui, you saw what happened. They came late. Moses Kuria and Murkomen and Cheruyot and Kimani Ichung'wah, they came late. And they wanted to go and occupy the front seats, which is occupied by
more than the drama aside.
Yes.
And I think
now
we have witnessed that drama from both ends. Let me ask this question.
Now that drama is not just drama. It was drama to make it look like this thing is not inclusive. But it's drama they are creating. Because why would you come late?
Moses Kuria, for instance, has been kicked out of the rally, I believe, in Kitui.
Yes.
And the governor stands there and says, if you are not supporting the president and you are not in line with the theme of the president, you will not speak at my rally.
I was in that rally and I saw what happened. The governor, like every other person, would be annoyed because you are coming late, you are coming to disrupt things, and then the rest of his friends, the Ichung'was and Murkomen, they got seats and they sat. Moses Kuria started quarreling with the youth there, and that's where the problem started.
No, fair enough, he was kicked out of that rally. Let's be fair. Nonetheless, let's get back to the question of referendum debate. The Haji-led steering committee yesterday said a referendum in 3 months was not realistic. IEBC also says that Parliamentary Budget Committee estimates show that IEBC will not have an additional money to the 4.4 billion shillings that is allocated for. It will have only an additional of 200 million shillings. If IEBC is factoring this out, if the Haji-led steering committee is not optimistic about this referendum in the next 3 months, surely there must be a cloud of uncertainty whether the referendum will be, is it?
Let me tell you one thing. One, on the issue of budget, because I've seen it in the media today.
Those are estimates, they're not the actual budget.
The issue of the budget policy statement is not the budget. It's just simply a policy. Say, these are the policy areas that we are going to consider. Two, even if it was a budget, we have an opportunity for a supplementary budget. If there is need to have a referendum, there can be a supplementary budget brought to Parliament for us to pass so that we can have money for the referendum. The issue of time, I think people are exaggerating this thing. Because if there is a document or there is a bill that will be brought, we need 1 million signatures. We know there were challenges when a similar process was done by court to get 1 million signatures. But this is a government. A government can get 1 million signatures in 1 day. 1 day.
And why would that government, just on that point, why would that government be in a hurry to create more positions rather than use that budget for the interest of Kenyans?
Let me tell you, it is not an issue of position. You know, you keep on taking me back to
you say it's not an issue of position. Look at what is being implemented.
Can we talk about the other 80 issues?
Which can be done without a referendum. The essence as to why you need a referendum is to change the governance.
For example, if you want to increase the percentage of allocation to counties, you have to go to referendum. You have to go to referendum. Some of the historical injustices, you may need to go to referendum. Because
we have the
they may touch on the Bill of Rights. So let us wait for the document, and we will know which issues will go to referendum and which issues will be handled administratively or which issues will be handled through legislation in Parliament.
Fair enough. I understand we are out of time. Nonetheless, let's sample some of the views of the people who are watching us. Of course, our audience. Purity on Facebook says we are not BBI is self-interest. Jordan Jenga says BBI is just for power, not for Mwananchi. Let BBI be for employment, project education, and etc. You want to react to that?
Yes. Well, you know, that is their views, but I want to say there is a lot of misinformation about this BBI. But eventually, as we go on, as the committee works, the BBI committee works, we'll have a final document that Kenyans will look at. But I think we must always ask ourselves, where did we start? And I said it started with the handshake. And the handshake was not just a handshake. It was an agreement between two political leaders. 9 issues. Those 9 issues, in their wisdom, they thought that let us have a process called BBI. That's why we have BBI. So if you are saying we throw away BBI, then we are as well saying we throw away the handshake.
Finally, I understand we have a caller on phone. Good evening. Hello, TV47.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Nataka kuuliza. Nataka kuchangia kidogo.
Changia ndugu, endelea na kusikiza.
Okay, sasa. Hello.
Hello.
Nilikuwa nauliza. Mbona wakati hawa watu walikuwa kwa na kuuliza mbona wakati huyu mtu kama huyu Raila Raila iko wakati walikuwa wanaambiwa na Kibaki. Wakaambiwa wewe utakuwa prime minister, ngiro wakaambiwa utakuwa deputy prime minister, mambo kama hayo. Alafu hiyo mambo hiyo yote ikaendelea ikakuwa tena baadaye. Alafu tena
kaka, uliza swali lako. If you can go ahead and ask the question, please.
Kama ni mambo zaidi itaendelea hivyo zaidi, kwenye mambo ya uongo tu, watu wanazungumza hivi na mambo ya ujuri wa aina fulani.
I think we have gotten him enough, and he echoes what many have said, as though this is a process whose interest largely lays within the politicians. Nonetheless, let me ask you one final question. You have talked of where we have come from, the start. Let me ask you of the end. What guarantees the longevity of this political bromance, this BBI report, this BBI initiative post-2022?
Let me say you one thing.
As we finalize.
BBI is about reforms. The reforms that we want in this country to deal with the 9 issues. And that is the point of departure that we are having with those who are opposed to this. Because they are looking at it in terms of 2022. Who knows about 2022? Even these 5 positions they are talking about, there is no name written on those 5 positions. In 2010, when we were campaigning for this constitution that we have, the same group of people led by Mr. Ruto, they opposed it on the same basis. that constitution was going to be expensive, that constitution was going to create positions.
Again, you're pointing fingers to one side in a process that you are championing to be inclusive.
Yes,
So
I'm saying that.
Inclusivity start
I am
from there.
saying that.
Why not include them first?
We are inclusive, but we are not going to allow people who are going to derail the process. A good process for Kenyans, a process that was born out of the need to fix 9 things which are dear to Kenyans. When we see we are having obstacles or people misinforming Kenyans that, oh, BBI is just about position, BBI is about Raila. Raila has fought for reforms in this country. He brought the new constitution. He fought for
He among many others.
And even this BBI, and this BBI is also a process for him to bring reforms in this country.
I understand we are out of time, but one will still wonder if the process is about inclusivity and there is finger pointing to both sides. Why not include them first so that you have one Kenya?
They don't want to be included.
Thank you. Thank you. Nominated Member of Parliament Godfrey Osotsi, thank you for making time.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to TV47.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of Spotlight. Thanks for watching. I'm Abubakar Abdullahi on behalf of the entire team that made this production possible. Enjoy the rest of our programs.